good evening there. Hi, everybody. Hi, it's Jason with Green Country Agriforestry. If you are watching this on replay, of course, it means it's Wednesday evening, 7:30 p.m. And pardon me while I get close to the camera. And there we go. Hi. You are, of course, watching the live stream from Wednesday, where we're going to be discussing all good things, nothing but good things, because that's what the world's made out of. It seems like a bold assertion that the world is made of nothing but good things, whenever we, as humans, have a tendency to see all the bad things that are in the world. But I can guarantee you it's true. Everything in the world is good, although some things are misunderstood. Hello to Chris Clevercraft. I can't talk. Chris Clevercraft. Chris Sunlightner. I liked her old name better. I could actually pronounce it. Moonsprout Sand Tina Ladybug. And of course, Vicky. Hello, Vicky. What a wonderful evening it is to not be outside scorching. It got up to about 97 out here today, which is a fine temperature for some folks, but not for others. Oh, hello. Chris just joined as a new member. Well, Chris, you're going to be excited because now that you're a member, you can go back and look at the community tab and read all of the pages that I've written and posted so far on the community tab of the story that I'm in the midst of writing. It's a science fiction story in the cyberpunk genre, but it contains a little bit of gardening as well, and a little bit of fantasy, and there's a little bit of a human love interest story in there too. So it's got a little bit of something for everyone, hopefully. Let's see, what should we start out with today? I guess we got 5 people on. I'm going to start out by reading a little bit to you. I did this last week when I took a little bit of the story that I'm writing, since I'm talking about it anyway, and I read it out loud. That was page 1 that I read. I'll go ahead and read out page 2. And for the people that missed page 1, that was sometime fairly early on in last week's live stream. So last week, the portion I had read, we encountered our hero, Ernest Milton, who was following well, actually, I shouldn't say that. He is going to be following a young lady into what appears to be a Renaissance fair. I don't know. Should I read this? I'll have to start with... Actually, I have to pick up from where I left off. This isn't going to make any sense, is it? No, it's not. I'll just skip reading. You'll have to be a member in order to find out what the story is. It would be too confusing otherwise, I think. Yeah, I'd have to start out all over from page 1 and read down to where we were. Otherwise, you'd just be in the middle and it wouldn't make any sense. All right. Vicky says, did I mention my driveway is in? The crew was impressed by the quality of the high spring. Yeah. You mentioned the high spring last week. It's enough to power your site by its... Wow. Okay, so you've got a lot of good water going for you then. Have you signed up, Vicky? Have you signed up with Greg for the survival tribes yet? Because I think you've probably got a good site for that. You get out there and start planting, get your hazelnuts in and things like these little guys. I was surprised. I found this just a little while ago today. I thought my strawberries were done, but apparently they're on. They're still making strawberries. Oh, that's sweet. They're still making strawberries. All right. Let me see here. Got 3 people in. Mary's in here somewhere, or she was. I thought. Uh-oh. We're missing people. Okay. Well, we only got 2 people in the audience today. I don't know if I want to start presenting my material until we get a couple more in. Okay, there's 3. Some more people come back in. All right, you're working more on developing your neighbors. Oh, there's Mary. Okay. Now you've got to have good relationships with your neighbors. Probably not exactly the topic for today, but I might mention it. That I've been working on a concept of developing the basic treaties that human beings need to have in between themselves in order to have a functioning civilization or a functioning society, as opposed to having groups of armed gangs running around imposing order upon everyone that we have to join by default. Instead, we can voluntarily coexist and not have as many problems. But it requires some basic foundations of civilization. Of course, the basic foundation of civilization, which currently our civilization worldwide is lacking, which means we're not really civilized at all, is the simple basic concept of law, which is, I will not harm you, and you will not harm me. No person may harm another without their consent. That's the foundation of law and the foundation of civilization. And of course, we don't have that in the world, certainly not in the North American continent. Here in the United States of America, the average person, of course, is violently dominated by criminal gangs pretty much all their lives. But this can change. First rule of civilization, of having an actual civilization, is the foundation of law. No person may harm another without their consent. That's the first mutual treaty that humans need to make amongst each other. The second one is mutual aid, where I help you when you need help and you help me when I need help. Seems fairly simple, and it's what neighbors do. It's what good neighbors should do. So whenever you're out and about dealing with your neighbors, whether you have a quarter of an acre or 100 acres, you look for neighbors that are going to be able to adhere to these basic rules. Hello, Tina McGuinan. We got Tina in. And Gail, Southern Living, is in with us tonight. So we have 2 of the basic rules and foundations of proper civilization. The third one is mutual defense. If I'm in trouble, you come to my aid. If you're in trouble, I come to your aid. If each individual manages to establish these basic 3 fundamental treaties with all individuals that they meet and in their sphere of influence, you have a functioning civilization. Not only a functioning civilization, but a good and healthy civilization. One that exists without the need for a ruling class. Sasspress Red is joining us. Hello, Sasspress Red. And I've got a kitty that joined us too. Her name is, what is your name? Who are you? Oh, yes, you're Suzu. That's right. Oi. Meow. Hello, Suzu. Say hello to the good people out there. Can you say hello? That way. Look at the camera. Okay, she's not gonna look at the camera. All right. I got my lunch here. I took the liberty of cracking a few hazelnuts before you guys got on. Vicky says, just started reading The Chinese Greenhouse, and with the ravine running east and west, I have an ideal site to put in a string. Oh, yeah, it sounds great. I'm thinking if you got the materials to do it, and you have an east-facing slope, just cut out into that, and you can allow the surrounding terrain to provide you a large portion of your thermal insulation, and you need to probably add minimal wood burning resources or something like that to get the temperature up. You can run a whole string of greenhouses on just the fuel that you grow around the area. Fresh produce or tropical trees, things of that nature. It's one of the great disadvantages that we have in my particular zone is we don't have things like black pepper that grow here. We can grow a Szechuan pepper, which is not exactly the same. The greens taste a bit like black pepper, but they're not the same. Yeah, Mary calls this kitty Pinky. I don't know why. I think it's because of our nose. She has a really pink nose. Okay. Now we got a few more people with us today. I want to make sure Nightbot is with us and functioning properly. Let's see. So did Nightbot respond, or is Nightbot offline? Okay, Nightbot's with us here. Okay. Let me go over here and read a little something to you. Not the story, because I realized if I'm going to read the story, I'm going to have to start all over from the beginning of page 1, and I don't want to do that. I found this particular article at the Science History Institute. And I'm just going to read this article, at least part of it verbatim, because I couldn't do a better job of writing it myself. One October day in 1784, Philadelphia horticulturalist William Bartram wrote out a list of 220 American trees, shrubs, and herbs in his fine, flowing handwriting. He was packing up seeds and young plants to send across the Atlantic, as he had done many times before. European collectors were eager to buy New World trees and plants, whether useful, ornamental, or simply unusual. Bartram's shipment included 12 oak species, 9 different pines, and 3 kinds of plums, along with such flowering plants as sunflowers and morning glories. Numbers 114 and 120 on the list, bracketing 5 varieties of grapes, were a bit different. Rus vernix and Rus radicans, known today as poison shumac and poison ivy. Now, it may seem incredible that Bartram offered these noxious plants for sale and that people in Europe actually bought them. For most people, poison ivy has long meant just one thing and one thing only, and that's suffering. The common 3-leaf plant and its relatives, poison oak and poison shumac, found in North America, and the lacquer tree, native to Asia, all contain urushiol, an organic compound that sets off violent allergic reactions in most humans. But as Bartram's packing list suggests, there is more to these plants than the painful itchy rash that they cause. Over the centuries, intrepid botanists, daring physicians, master craftsmen, and persistent chemists have looked for the good side of poisonous plants. These vines, shrubs, and trees have been collected as exotic garden curiosities, have been sourced for medicine that might cure rather than harm, and have been harvested for the sticky sap that gives lacquerware its particular sheen. Jump back over here. So, a while back, I started coming to this certain realization that everything that we see out there in the natural world has a purpose. That all of these things working together create an environment that allows for an abundance of life. Left to its own devices, nature will, over time, create a very abundant system, even without our involvement. But this abundant system without our involvement is one that doesn't necessarily lend itself to promoting human life. In order for it to promote human life, we have to take that wild garden out there in nature and tend it and work it into something that is good and promotes human life. Of course, we find out there in the great wild world things like the poison ivy plant. And when we look at it and see how it causes us rashes, it's hard to find an appreciation for a plant like that. And it's hard to see how it could be good. But as it turns out, poison ivy does have a positive benefit and a positive use. And that positive benefit and positive use is in medicine. As it turns out, the 3-leaf menace that vexes so many people, whenever it is applied to certain difficult to treat skin disorders, particularly those that have a microbial source, can be useful for treating of those ailments. I'll give you an anecdotal description here. Let me find it real quick. All right, so this was in France, in Paris. There was an army physician and medical professor by the name of André Ignace Joseph Dufresnoy. What an incredibly ridiculous name. All right. This man became one of poison ivy's most fervent supporters around 1780. Like a lot of physician botanists of the area, he collected unusual plants for his personal medicinal garden. have to keep in mind at this time, physicians were using a lot of natural herbs instead of over-the-counter patent medications. Over-the-counter patent medications hadn't really become a thing yet. So everything that you used for medicine came from nature. This gentleman gave botany lectures that were open to the general public. One day he showed some leaves of his Rus radicans, which is a poison ivy, and spoke about its irritant effects. A young florist in the audience couldn't believe that such an innocent-looking plant could be so powerful. After the lecture, he rubbed the leaves vigorously on his hands, egged on by one of de Fresnoy's students. The florist soon wound up regretting his impulsive act, but after the painful swelling and rash finally cleared, he came back to the physician and told him that an ugly old sore on his wrists had completely vanished. So this infection that he had that had resisted healing up to that point had been cured by the application of the poison ivy and its urushiol. This is simply an anecdotal piece of information. I'm not telling you should go out and start rubbing poison ivy leaves all over yourselves. However, it turns out that in certain circumstances, the noxious weed does have medicinal benefits, and it's not without its redeeming qualities. A few weeks ago, maybe a month or two ago, I talked about how some plants are really hard to love, how it's hard to find what the benefit or the good is in them. And so after a little bit of research, Mary came to me and said, "Oh, by the way, did you know?" and brought me some information on poison ivy, so I had to go and look it up and see. Oh, Voon Child is with us tonight. Hello, Voon. Let's see. Vicky is talking about her property. Has to be careful with excavating and varies between solid limestone, mixed clay, and sand. Yeah, hilltops are like that out there. It's mostly, well, you'll have some broken up limestone or fairly, I don't know, decayed limestone up at the tops of the hills, and then after you get down a couple feet through that, you start hitting the hard stuff. It really depends upon where you're at, though. Vicky says, "I've been richly blessed to be totally immune to poison ivy." Well, it turns out that allergic reaction that so many of us experience is mostly immune response. Apparently, one of the things that this plant does whenever it comes into contact is it triggers an immune response. There's been a lot of talk out in the news recently about vaccines and the way vaccines operate. And without going into too great a detail about whether vaccines are good or bad, the modern vaccine, not the RNA derivative, but the one that typically is produced, is made by taking virus, killing the virus, and then injecting that into the host, into the body, the victim, or the person being vaccinated. But since the virus is dead, it is very likely that the body will ignore the dead virus because it poses no threat. It doesn't provoke an immune response. So in order to get the body to be convinced or tricked into making antibodies, they add components to the vaccine to provoke an immune response. Well, it turns out that poison ivy provokes an immune response, causing white blood cells to flood the area, causing the histamine response, which causes the blisters to rise. That's why you get the irritating rash, the swelling, and the blisters. But also, if you had an infection that wasn't getting combated effectively by your immune system before, that immune system response kicked into overdrive very well might eliminate that resistant infection. So if we're looking at a future where things like Staphylococcus aureus or methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus might be running rampant, and we're worried about, the flesh-eating bacteria being too great of a problem, it's quite possible that poison ivy with its urushiol just might be an effective topical treatment for what could be a very deadly skin infection. So there's an example, just one, of how something that we first off perceive as being bad can ultimately wind up being good. There are many other examples we can get into. I'll give you one after a minute here. Let me just Mary says you try it first. Okay, Mary, I'll try it. I actually have an infection right here that has resisted healing. See right there? It's resisted healing for quite a while now. So I will, not today, but sometime very soon, get some poison ivy and put it on there, and we'll see what happens. I'm not particularly allergic to it either, so it may be difficult for it to provoke an immune response from me. Vicky says, Mom was so sensitive to poison ivy that she couldn't even get downwind of it. Mary's mom, Margaret, is the same way. Just she says she can look at it and break out. Lost count of how many times she had to go to the emergency for shots and spent days wrapped in wet sheets. Ooh, that sounds horrible. And probably not incredibly effective either, although I guess the wet sheets gave her some relief from the symptoms. In any case, I'm making the assertion that everything that you find in the natural world is good. Now, I talked with Mary a bit before today, and I thought maybe I was going to bring out the book. You guys know which book I'm talking about, right? The book. And read from the first chapter in that particular book. Because there's a segment in that chapter that talks about how when the Creator made the world, he declared that everything that was created was good. And the thought occurs to me that those of you who are familiar with this particular book, and those of you that follow some brand of faith that is based upon it, are already familiar with this chapter. You're already familiar with the book, and you're already familiar with what it said. So it wouldn't really do me any good to tell you what you should already know. And the people that aren't interested in hearing about that book, I'm not going to persuade them by reading to them out of it anyway. But for those of you who care, you can look at the book of Genesis in the Bible and read where it says that everything that was created is good. Which begs the question, if it's all good, then why do we see bad? And I see we've lost a couple of viewers just mentioning that. It's not the intention at all. And I'm not going to preach at you. But it's a curious characteristic of human nature that whenever we see things and when we have experiences, we have a tendency to only focus on the negative aspects. For example, today, it's hot outside. It's miserable outside. It's hot and miserable outside. All across, well, where we live anyway, hot and miserable. That's the thing that we notice. We don't necessarily notice that finally we have enough of the heat that we need for our pepper plants to start putting on and producing fruit, or enough heat that we need for our tomato plants to really start setting their fruit properly and ripening fruit. We don't necessarily notice that aspect. See, that's the good aspect of the heat wave that we're having. But we do notice that it's hot and miserable. Mary says she drug her. Oh, Mary is really has a bad allergic response to poison ivy, by the way. Said she drug herself on cold medicine and sleep through it. Ooh. Everything is good. Even those horrible events. Mary says, I think the human ability to see the bad is derived from their ability to see danger. Well, yeah, I suppose it's part of the self-preservation instinct that we have. We see bad things, we want to avoid the bad things. And those can come in a variety of aspects. All right. So, imagine for a moment you're driving to work and your car has a flat. And you're now on the side of the road with a flat tire. You're going to be late for work. It's raining, or maybe it's sleeting and it's cold outside, and you have to change your tire in the sleet and in the cold, in the rain, being late for work, probably going to get fired. It seems like you're having a bad day. But what you don't know is that if you kept going down the road without the flat tire, within a quarter of a mile from where you're at when you got the flat tire, another car on the road was going to slip on that wet, sleet-covered or icy or rain-strewn road and lose control. Not enough to go off the road, but enough to veer off into the other lane where you would have been at that exact moment if you hadn't had the flat tire. Your two cars would have collided. You would have both spun out of control, leading to a four-car pileup with multiple casualties. But you had a flat tire. And not only was your life saved, but dozens of other lives were not impacted by this other event which could have happened. These are things that you just don't see, and they happen all the time. They happen every day. So the next time you're in one of those situations where it looks like things are horrible, instead of focusing on the negative aspect, instead try to remember what's happening right now may seem bad, and it's inconvenient for me, maybe even horrific. But on the balance, this event very well may be preventing something much more disastrous from happening, or it may be creating an opportunity for something wonderful to happen. For example, you didn't make it to work on time, you lost your job. Did you really like that job that you're at in the first place? Or did losing your job create the opportunity that you needed to find the new job, the new occupation that you really did enjoy, that was going to provide you with a lot more financial compensation, a lot more satisfaction, more hours at home with your family? These are things to think about whenever you encounter bad situations. And it's not just, the things that you encounter in nature. We'll give another example. Bee stings. When I was younger, I was allergic to bees and wasps, any kind of insect venom. If I was stung, I was swelling up big time. And a doctor told me that if it got much worse, that I would need to start carrying around an EpiPen with me everywhere I went. And for years, I was very, very, very cautious, deathly afraid of wasps, hornets, bees. If there was a possibility that one of those little buzzing critters was outside, I would just shy away from it. I did not want to run the risk of getting stung. And then about 12 years ago, one afternoon, I wasn't paying attention to what I was doing, and I reached out to grab a screen door that was swinging shut. And when I put my hand out to stop the door, there was a red paper wasp that was right in between my two fingers. It got scared. It stung me on the finger. I, of course, went, ow, that hurts. And at that particular moment, I had a choice. My choice was I could panic because I've been stung by a red paper wasp. The venom was now in me. And I was probably going to start swelling up and having an allergic reaction, possibly going into anaphylactic shock. I might need to go to a hospital. Or I could choose to view the experience in a different way. And I had been reading about the medicinal effects of insect venom. I'd been having problems with arthritis because getting up in years. And I decided at that moment that instead of panicking, instead of regarding the wasp sting as an attack, an injury, something bad, that I was going to experience that venom as a medicine and treatment for my arthritis, and I allowed it to work. I still got in the car. I still very calmly drove home where I had some ephedrine, just to be safe. I didn't have an EpiPen, but I did have a source of Ephedra at that moment. Ephedra Viridia, we can actually grow it here in North America, particularly in the desert regions in the Southwest. They call it Mormon tea, but it does contain ephedrine, which produces epinephrine and norepinephrine, which can counteract things that would give you anaphylactic shock. I had it at home, so I was prepared to go and ingest that particular decoction, making a tea out of it. But as I continued to drive and thought of it as being medicine, I noticed that the wound was not swelling. Not only was the wound not swelling, but the stiffness that I would ordinarily associate in my fingers, in my joints, was alleviated. I got home, no swelling, no itch, no pain, and all the symptoms of arthritis disappeared. And the main difference between being a young child stung by insects and swelling up and having a horrible allergic reaction and being an adult, the main difference was my attitude, how I chose to view the situation. I'll give you another example. Hang on. Things that seem bad. Last week, I was out there weeding along the side of the house, on the north side of the house. I've got several different bushes planted over there. I have a few blueberry bushes. I don't really put them in the videos much because it's an overgrown area. I haven't gotten around to putting in the edging on that side of the driveway and mulching in to make it nice and neat. So it's a little bit wild and untamed. There's a bunch of elm trees that are trying to pop up in there. All different kind of weeds. But I have some goji berries and blueberries in that area. So I'm weeding along, just pulling them up. And I reach down into a mess of weeds, and I grab a hold and I get ready to pull. But I had accidentally grabbed a hold of one of the goji berries. It turns out the goji berry has little thorns on it. And I stuck my finger on the thorns. Ow! Well, that's a bad experience, but I imagine this. If that was a blackberry or a goji berry or any other one of these little plants that have a very specific useful purpose, those thorns that it has are there to protect the plant. I would have uprooted it. Accidentally, to be sure, but I would have uprooted it. And then I would have been without that plant later on, should I have happened to have a need for it. So once again, the defensive mechanism of the plant prevented me from doing something I shouldn't have done. And although it was a minor injury, a minor inconvenience to me, it prevented me from eliminating a potential food source. Ultimately, the thorns on these plants that are thorny are a good thing. The only problem is occasionally we run into them by accident and we interact with them improperly, and that leads us to grief. Chris is saying you should share all of that because then we get to watch it coming out. Are talking about applying the poison ivy to the spot that is resisted healing to this point. You know, I have treated this with, I treated it with bee honey, or with honey, medicinal honey. I have treated it with topical antiseptics. I've taken mega doses of vitamin C and other things trying to build up to fight the infection. And it's not so much an infection as it is a wound that does not want to heal properly. So what else can I try? Yeah, I think I will. I think I'll try applying some poison ivy to it and see how it works. So that'll be an upcoming project. Oh, okay. So Chris is saying, no, share the part of the house that you don't think is kept up. Okay, I see what you're talking about. Right. Well, you do occasionally see it whenever I'm taking one of those shots where we're looking down the driveway, and on the right hand side you see all the pretty little canna lilies and everything in that little segment. Then on the left hand side, on the other side of the air prune box, there's a little bit of a wild, messy area. That's the area we're talking about. It's. I don't have the edgers that I need to really take that from just being wild and unkempt into properly maintained at the moment. We've got a few projects that are in the works that are on hold until we take care of a sycamore tree that's sick. Let me see here. Vicky says, wild rose is phenomenally thorny, but it doesn't help them against hungry goats. Yeah, goats can eat just about anything. What? What are you saying, Kitty? What are you saying? Okay. All right. Sorry. More hazelnuts. We got Katie Murray with us tonight. Zachary Pinniger. I don't think I've seen Zachary Pinniger here too many times. And Drew's. Oh, wow. Drew's Food Forest and Edible Landscaping is here. That's a good channel name. I really like Edible Landscaping. I mean, I really, really like Edible Landscaping. If any at all times possible, whenever you can get out there and find a flower or a shrub that looks nice that you can plant in the yard, and people will go, oh, wow, what a nice ornamental plant that actually is a food source. I love it. I absolutely love it. I don't know if I can find that channel link, but I'll try. Let me see here. Drew's Food Forest and Edible Landscaping. Let's see if I can find you. We're going to have moderators do it too. Let's see. BREW''S Food Forest Edible Landscaping. Hey, I found you. I think I found you. Let me see. Copy that link. Yep, I did. There it is. I found a link for Drew's Food Forest and Edible Landscaping. He's only got 10 subscribers right now. So perfect opportunity to get in on another food forest build. Sassafras Red said, apple cider vinegar helps dry out poison ivy and stops the itch. You get the rash, but it clears up quick. You know, if you're not using poison ivy for its medicinal purposes, the rash can be annoying. But you don't have to worry about having too severe of a rash. If you feel that you may have been exposed to it, and you're one of the people that does have a strong immune response to being exposed to urushiol, as quick as you possibly can, get to someplace where you have soap and water and wash thoroughly the areas that are affected with soap and water, rinse thoroughly, and that usually prevents most of the problem. It takes a little bit of time for those chemical compounds to work their way through the upper layers of the dermis and actually provoke the immune response. So as long as you get to it within half an hour to an hour, most of the time you can prevent a bad reaction to it. Or you can just sweat a lot like I do, and it just runs off. Okay. Let me see here. Ta-da. Mary says, but it's a short time to spread. You think sweat spreads it? Depends upon how much you sweat. I can sweat a lot. All right, so yeah, having a look at what Drew's got. He's got a banana circle. Nice, nice, nice. Doing garden rows and agroforestry, kind of like David the Good is doing. Cocoa trees, pawpaw, and rhubarb. Rhubarb is one of the things I haven't added to my garden design yet, but we should be able to grow it here. I won't be able to grow cacao trees. We might be able to grow pawpaws though. Maybe, possibly. Sassafras Red says we also make handmade cold processed soap that cuts the oils. That's good. Yeah. Mm. Soap, anything with some detergent action to it is pretty good. All right. So, what was it that these people, these botanists, that were first introducing Europe to the the poisonous weeds? What were they saying? They were saying that this particular plant did not have an ill nature. It was not bad in and of itself. However, ignorance of how it is to be used properly and ignorance of the plant itself could lead a person to some unfortunate experiences. De Fresnoy, the botanist that we were talking about from Paris, uh, began concocting medicines from poison ivy. He tried boiling the leaves to make an infusion for internal use. He drunk it himself as a test. Reported that even a strong infusion made with 12 leaves produced only mild side effects. His stomach became slightly upsweat. His sweating and urination increased. He then prescribed the infusion and later a distilled extract from his poison ivy plants to people suffering from a range of skin maladies and even to some with paralysis of the legs, claiming positive results in many cases. So, once again, that's anecdotal evidence, not medical advice. Anywhere you look right now, they would tell you that ingestion of poison ivy is likely to kill you. But I would point out that in many cases, the difference between medicine and poison is dosage and appropriate application. So Sasspress Red saying we're trying rhubarb as a root barrier. That's an idea. So basically as a rhizome barrier to stop the spread of running plants, running grasses, bamboo, Bermuda grass, things like that. Hey, if that works, I want to try it. Chris Coverclap saying elderberry is poison until processed somehow. Oh, actually, there are a couple of different varieties of elderberry. There's the American elderberry, and there's a European elderberry. And although they are similar, the European elderberry is a lot more toxic than the American elderberry. So make sure you're getting the right elderberry if you're going to be eating the berries. And yeah, rhubarb, you only eat the stem. It's one of those plants that has some parts that are poisonous and some parts that aren't. All right. Sasspress Red said, yep, stop all of those issues, particularly running plants. And he learned it from Edible Acres. Nice. Sean at Edible Acres has got an excellent channel. As a matter of fact, I believe he got put on the list for the top 100 experts on permaculture recently, which is kind of cool. I didn't make the list, but Sean deserves to be on it. He's a great guy, and has got a lot of nice plants that you can purchase from him if you get to him in time. He's got a small nursery, I think 5 acres altogether. So the quantity that he has is limited, but he has a good selection. One of these days, I'm hoping to get some Turkish rocket from him if he doesn't sell out before I can get to it. Okie dokie. Let me see here. Let's see. Is there anything else from the story that I want to show or want to share? Nah, not really. I just found that particular article to be interesting. It didn't give me any specific information on exactly how to use poison ivy as a treatment for illnesses. Just the fact that it had been used and used successfully in a few interesting cases. I'm hearing the cicadas outside. It's a nice time of year. If it wasn't so hot outside, we could be out there. All right. So what is everybody up to out there? Does anyone have any particular stories about something that you thought was bad at first that turned out to be good? It's always a nice place to start. Checking up here on past comments. I don't see anything. All right. So, stories, anybody? Sassafras Red says we're using Sambuca canadensis berries dried and ground without issues. Yes, Sambuca canadensis is the American elderberry, the North American version of the elderberry plant. Mary said, did not know that black locust had pretty flowers. Oh, okay, yeah. Black locust is another example of one of those troublesome plants, right? We have tons of it around here. Guys, if you want some black locusts, we're going to have some available for sale coming this fall. I'm growing up a couple and preparing them for shipping in case somebody wants them, but you have to be warned. Black locust is a tree that wants to take over the world. Whenever you hear somebody talk about something and say it's invasive, they mean black locust. That's what they're talking about. It's invasive, very, very invasive. Once you have it, you'll never get rid of it. It spreads through runners underground and pops up everywhere. You cut down the main tree, 5 more pop up from the runners. So it seems horrible for wanting to take over. At the same time, it's wonderful because all of those roots are forming associations with rhizobium bacteria and pulling nitrogen out of the atmosphere and fixing it in nodules at the root level and improving the soil. That network of roots running underground can help hold sandy soil in place and hold organic matter in place in sandy soil, allowing you to build up your organic matter on top. The downside, of course, is thorns. It has very sharp thorns. I've heard of thornless black locust, but that's not the type we have. We have the type with thorns. And these guys, they're not long. They're not like the acacia. It's not like the official acacia tree with the long thorns. These are short but razor sharp thorns that almost jump out and attack you as you pass by, kind of like a cholla. But they can cut you just as quick as looking at you. If you're starting out from scratch and you have poor soil and you're really wanting to build up an area and make it good quality soil, black locust as a pioneer is a good choice. If you're wanting to put up a privacy hedge on the outer edge of a fairly large area and you wanted to protect it from random two-legged critters, black locust is good. There are a few other trees that are like that. Yeah, okay. Vicky's pointing out black locust is excellent for fencing. It's good for anything with an outdoor application. If you want the wood for an outdoor application, fence posts, outdoor furniture of some sort, it doesn't like to rot at all. So if you're going to be building a raised bed and you have an ample supply of black locust wood, you can build a raised bed with black locust wood, and your bed's going to be intact for years instead of, years and years. Much longer than pine would last. For certain animals, yes, black locust is good tree hay, a fodder tree, something for goats to eat. So it has a wide variety of good practical applications. But if you happen to come across it and encounter those thorns, you might think, oh, that's a bad tree. It hurts. And it does. But it does produce It does produce flowers prolifically in the early spring, and those flowers are laden with nectar, and the bees love locust honey or locust nectar for their honey. So, along with your red buds for the early spring, the locusts also provide a nectar feast for your honeybees. Keeping your happy honeybees, keeping happy pollinators around is fairly important. All the same, me personally, I don't like it. I'd rather have more red buds. Okay, Chris was asking about mulberries. We have no, we have three. I was going to say we have two. We have two on the north side of the property, and then one over on the south side of the property. Mulberry trees. Unfortunately, our mulberry trees are old, and they produce most of their fruit well up out of easy reaching distance because they were allowed to just grow before I discovered that we had mulberry trees. And I don't know if I want to try cutting them back or just eliminating them and starting over from scratch and keeping mulberries as an understory or shrub tree. And mulberries as understory or shrub trees are great. That way you can actually reach the fruit and benefit from it. And of course, mulberries like to mine sulfur from the subsoil. So if you need to add sulfur as a amendment, say for example growing alliums, garlic or onions or something like that, allowing your mulberry trees to grow and then bush out and then gather the leaves and put those in the areas where you need your sulfur at is probably a good idea. You're going to lose both peach trees to fire blight. That's not good. Vicky's saying mulberries respond very well to coppicing. Well, I might try it. I mean, the smallest of them is about maybe somewhere between 4 and 6 inches in diameter. So it'll be pretty heavily coppiced. And then the larger ones, they're a lot bigger than that, close to 8 inches. They're big. But we could try. They're also right along the fence lines. And I'm going to be needing to go through there and do a few things as we expand the rock wall around the property. Eventually, I want to build that rock wall up to a total of 2 foot high all the way around. And those mulberry trees are actually in the way, and I'm going to have to remove them eventually. Tina says, I've cut mulberries to the ground. They always come back. That's good to know. You got something going on. Chris has something going on the leaves of an apple tree or two. Depends upon where you're at. If you're in lowlands like we are, apples don't do well at all. They're very prone to fungal infection. Sassafras Red says, I've cut mulberry to the ground and they sucker back. Well, that gives me an idea what I might do. I've got a bug crawling on my camera. Isn't that horrible? What I might try doing is going ahead and cutting them back and then letting the suckers form. Once the suckers have got roots, then I can come in and expose the rooted part of the sucker and then cut them away from the rest of the tree, and that will give me a start that I can move to someplace other than the fence line, and that might be a thing to try. These are red mulberries. So Sassafras Red is going to get a video of the mulberries before and after. If you can get some pictures of that fire blight on the peach trees, that would be useful too. The last time I saw fire blight was on Bradford pear, and don't really like seeing fire blight in the neighborhood, but I don't particularly care to have Bradford pear around either. So if the Bradford pears are sick and we need to cut them down to get rid of them, that's good as far as I'm concerned. Those are probably one of those plants that does have a positive use. I just don't know what it is. Well, there's Robert at Homestead Aquarius. Says thumbs up for you, Jason Neighbors. Oh, incidentally, Homestead Aquarius, Robert at Homestead Aquarius, has got some videos where he shows the starting of mulberry trees, red mulberries, from seed. So you can go check out that particular video and many others that he's got. There's John Conrad Farms saying hello. He just got home. So free new mulberry. Yay. Yeah, any tree that you can coppice that's going to produce from suckers is pretty easy to get new plants started that way. Just cut it back, let them start to grow up from the root ball at the base. Whenever you cut it back, keep your mulch up and around it. And then after the suckers come up and the suckers are established, pull your mulch back, move the dirt back away. It should be soft and easy to handle. Look for where the roots are, and then get your loppers out and snip that sucker loose from the parent, and you should have a newly started tree. Anything that you can grow from suckers is wonderful. Vicky says, I think Stefan has videos on fire blight. I know he has a lot on black knot. and he has an awful lot on getting your trees to multiply through division of suckers and things of that nature. So Stefan Sokoviak is also really great to go watch. As much as I try to avoid religion, Sassafras Brad said, Bradford pears were made by the devil. Ain't no use for them except to make people feel good about planting a tree. All right, so you're really having problems with fire blight on the peaches. I hope I don't wind up with fungal issues with my peach tree. Right now, it's the only prunus I have. I just have one general peach tree. They didn't even tell me what the specific cultivar was. It is a peach, so I've got a generic peach tree out there in the backyard. If it manages to take, then I want to add some plums and cherries to the lineup. Whenever the sycamore over here on the north side comes out, I want to put a plum tree in that location, and then I'll cross graft from the peach to the plum tree, and we'll have plums growing on a peach tree and peaches growing on a plum tree. And then later on, when the two red buds, they're over here on the northwest corner, go, we'll take those and replace them with a couple of cherry trees, one of the tart, one of the sweet, so they can cross pollinate. And once those are established, we'll take limbs from each of those and then move them around. So we'll have all four different trees grafted onto each other. And at that point, I don't think I'll need any more fruit trees. That's more fruit than I'm ever going to eat. Robert's saying Bradford pears are a curse, even though they may make rootstock. I don't know. I don't know if I'd want them for the rootstock. Because if you wind up having them sucker, then you're going to be producing more Bradford pears up from the rootstock. But they do produce flowers in abundance. And so there might actually be a positive use for the Bradford pear. Because they produce flowers in abundance, that means that they're a source of nectar for bees early in the spring, whenever they're in bloom. And those little fruits are a source of food for migratory birds whenever those are ripe or close to ripe and ready to go. So there's a couple of different uses for a Bradford pear, but for our purposes, it's not very useful. Going down this Steiner route, Bradford pears are from Ahriman's design. Oh, okay. There we go. Let's see. It's like the crab apple of pears. Well, not so much. I mean, crab apples are they're the wild apple. They have a tendency to be small and not usually as sweet, but they're prolific, and they make a good source of genetics for starting an orchard with. But occasionally you'll have a crab apple that gets cross-pollinated and it will produce a fruit, and from the seeds in that fruit you can plant a tree that produces wonderful fruit. It all depends. Robert says normal pears bloom as well. Yes, they do. But see, this is the difference between deliberately tending a garden and just letting things grow because they're there. If we just let things grow because they're there, you never know what you're going to get. It might be useful or it might be not quite so useful for our purposes. But it's always good for something. Well, I see that it's 8:30. So I think we're just about done. Sasspress says I didn't think pollinators use them. The Bradford pear, yeah, the pollinators visit Bradford pears. It's just there are better trees that you can plant deliberately than a Bradford pear. All right. Yeah, it's Espresso. Their crab apples are awesome. There's one near us that makes prolific fruit and big enough to make jelly. So it really all depends. There's so much genetic variation in the Malus genus that whenever you get one that's grown from a seed, you just really don't know what you're going to get until it produces fruit. Robert's funny. Pollinators do use them. It would be the only sliver of good, but it's about the same as if a nuke played a pretty tune as it was going off. Well, at least it sounded nice. So yeah, sometimes when we look out at nature and we find those wild things growing, it's hard to find the good in them. But and for me, this is actually a matter of faith that there is good in everything that you find in nature. The question is, can we figure out what that good is, and can we put it to work for us? Suzanne Steck says, hello, my lively friends. And hello, but you've come along right towards the end of the broadcast. Hey, I'd like to thank you all for coming out tonight. As always, if you found the video informative or entertaining, you know what to do. I will catch you next time, and good night, everyone.